The Baths of Diocletian complex was the largest bathing facility ever built in the Roman Empire. Though the outside areas of the Baths of Caracalla were larger, the building complex itself in the center was smaller. Built in AD 306, it served 10,000 people daily for 250 years. Much of it still exists today after it was transformed into a church. The main hall, called the Frigidarium, was converted into a basilica by Michelangelo. Here is a model of the baths in its prime compared to what remains today, which after nearly 2 millennia is quite extraordinary. Despite much of the bathing facility buildings lost to time, what remains of the complex today is still enormous, as seen in the following photos. The main entrance we are walking towards now formed part of the caldarium, or hot section of the baths. Much of it was still existent in the 16th century, even restored and modified by Michelangelo, until it was demolished by Pope Sixtus V. Its last major change was done in AD 1911, which reversed the changes done in 1749. This was done as a desire to return the entrance to some semblance of its ancient appearance, and so today when you enter the basilica, you pass through a doorway set in a curved concave wall, which is the sole surviving remnant of the former caldarium hot baths building. Essentially, the current entrance consists of 2 doorways within an ancient crumbling brick wall that forms a concave semicircle. Behind the entrance in the wall of the caldarium is the ancient tepidarium, the former heated area which provided warm baths. The dome is a smaller version of the design found in the Pantheon, and people pass through this building to reach inside the basilica today, and the tepidarium forms part of the same basilica of St. Mary of the Angels and Martyrs.
No.
Okay.
Have a walk.
The ancient outline of the theatre area is today preserved by the current buildings forming part of the Piazza della Repubblica, designed in the late 1800s. Here we see parts of the theatre wall still standing in the 1500s and the unrestored baths in the background, including the still-standing caldarium hot baths, yet to be restored by Michelangelo and yet to be demolished by Pope Sixtus V.
Baths.
We are now inside the tepidarium, about to walk inside the basilica. The baths were lavishly decorated with marble walls and floors, hundreds of columns, frescoes, mosaics, and statues. Stepping into the basilica today, designed by Michelangelo, gives a unique perspective of entering the baths in their prime, as it is equally ornate and still one of the most impressive interior spaces in the entire modern city of Rome. Remarkably, the Egyptian red granite columns, capitals, and vaulted ceiling have miraculously survived 1,700 years, including years when Rome faced sackings, wars, earthquakes, and neglect. In the heart of the largest Roman baths ever constructed, a Catholic basilica now stands within the former Frigidarium and Tepidarium sections. The likelihood of an ancient Roman building enduring over time greatly increased if it was converted into a church. However, unlike the Pantheon, which was converted into a Christian church early in AD 609, it took nearly 950 years for the Baths of Diocletian to undergo this transformation. For almost 10 centuries, the baths were abandoned, neglected, and looted for materials. Fortunately, the vast size and solid construction techniques allowed the central area of the ancient baths to retain its crucial column and roof infrastructure, making the conversion process more feasible and successful. Another key factor in the transformation was its role in preserving and reinforcing the crumbling infrastructure of the baths. By the 16th century, the Baths of Diocletian's structure had become so hazardous that public access was prohibited due to fears that parts of the structure might collapse on visitors. In AD 1561, Pope Pius IV commissioned Michelangelo to transform the frigidarium and tepidarium of the ancient baths into the Church of St. Mary of the Angels and Martyrs. The church believes many Christians died while forced to build the baths from AD 298 to 306. It is fitting and triumphant that the baths attributed to Diocletian, who instigated arguably one of the worst eras of persecutions of the Christians, are now a Catholic basilica. It took many years of pleading to church officials before Pius IV finally agreed to finance renovating the baths into a church. Already at the age of 86, Michelangelo used the original parts of the baths as much as possible, unfortunately passing away before the work was done. The project was finished by one of his students, Jacopo Loduca, the nephew of Antonio Loduca, who purportedly had a vision in AD 1541 that spearheaded the renovation of the dilapidated baths. In his vision, he saw a bright light over the baths, and he witnessed 7 angels that had given relief and assistance to Christian martyrs forced to build these baths. Antonio believed his vision meant God was telling him a church must be built in the ruins of the Baths of Diocletian to honor the Christian martyrs and the 7 angels, and thus the reason for the words angels and martyrs in the church name. Almost 500 years later, and after further renovations, the basilica is still a grandiose marvel of architectural design to behold. Entering it feels like stepping into the baths in the 4th century, when it was adorned with tall columns, intricately carved marble decorations, walls covered with marble panels, and gleaming inlaid marble and granite floors which still exist. The success of Michelangelo's renovation is undeniable. Like the ancient Roman architects before him, he created vast, beautiful spaces that amaze and delight the eye. Many of the columns and marble capitals are the ancient originals, having survived over 1,700 years. Each of the Egyptian red columns are 12 meters long and weight 100 tons, were quarried in Egypt and shipped to Rome, a massive undertaking, although this church is not an exact reproduction of the ancient baths. It provides a close approximation of the splendor of ancient Roman architecture, similar to the experience of seeing the interior of the Pantheon. Stepping outside and behind the main basilica, we see a section of what remains of the natatio, the outside swimming pool. This pool was 3 times the size of an Olympic swimming pool and featured beautiful sculptures along the walls. This image shows the natatio in relation to the main hall and buildings already explained, while the next image shows the section where we just were, which is the concaved wall just below the main hall to the right. Here's another section of the natatio, which is also open to the public, which, if you look to the previous photo from the air, is taken from the left concave opening behind the Basilica Hall. The wall still survives, and the next few photographs and virtual reconstructions show a comparison between the current surviving natatio section and the outside swimming pool in its prime. Finally, we are behind the bath complex, specifically behind the ruins of one of the gymnasiums. As indicated in the next picture, it is the gymnasium near the top of the screen. Further up ahead is a surviving octagonal hall. Its location between the caldarium and gymnasium, with its lack of heating system, has led to the assumption that the room served as a minor frigidarium, or cold plunge room for ablutions. From AD 1575, it was transformed into the grain storage facility by Pope Gregory VIII. From 1928 to the 1980s, it was the seat of the largest planetarium in Europe. Today, it is open to the public as part of the National Roman Museum in Rome, displaying ancient statues found in the great Roman baths.